Well, Gen Z tells me that Paul George is better. That's what I hear, which is ironic because Bencaro is younger, but that's something I've long been fascinated with. Is that something that you've noticed as a guy out on YouTube? You've got an audience that is younger than the typical audience in sports media. Have you noticed that Paul George has this odd resonance with younger hoopers than one might think in a way that's not commensurate? Is that the word I'm looking for? It's not at the level of his accomplishments, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, so for instance, to that point, Paul George had by any metric a very disappointing series against Dallas, but he hit a massive shot in game 4. And it was this crazy, like, in and out, between the legs, behind the back to his right side, massive step back into the corner, covered a ton of ground, was perfectly contested, and it just dropped right in, nothing but net. And it was the shot that gave the Clippers the lead late, right before James Harden made those floaters that he hit. And that shot I saw on social media everywhere for the next few days. And I saw slow motion versions of it, all these different kind of like romanticizations of this particular shot. And like, that's the thing. I think there's like a piece of that resonates in highlight culture. And I think that may have a certain resonance with Gen Z. Like there's a lack of real interest in some of the dirty elements that win basketball games. And that's kind of the whole thing that takes us back to the beginning, is like, it's to win basketball games, you have to be willing to do things that aren't fun. Like they just aren't. I remember when I was watching the 2012 finals, there was an offensive rebound that Shane Battier got on a missed free throw. Miami had the ball, missed a free throw. Shane Battier got the offensive rebound. It was at the end of game 5. So like the series was over basically. And I can't remember if I want to say, was Steve Kerr on the panel at that point? I think he might've been. But I think it was Breen, Van Gundy, and it might have been Kerr. I can't remember who it was, but they had 3.
Yeah,
it was 2012.
Kerr was Turner.
Oh, he was Turner. Who was?
Maybe he was on the panel. It's the funny thing. I can't remember exactly who was on in 2000. Who other than Breen in 2012? Even though
that's
I watched
not the Doug
finals.
Collins era, is it? No, I can't remember.
Doug Collins and Jalen Rose could be, but I don't know. But anyway, the game and what happened.
So I think it was Van Gundy was waxing eloquent after that rebound, basically talking about how Miami wanted it more. Like Battier has been in all these playoff battles over the years, and he wants the Larry O'Brien so bad that he beat everybody to this loose ball. And it seems kind of narrative-y, but there's truth to that, because one of the most common themes that you'll see for every men's league player out there that's listening, like, you ever notice how like there's that young talented team that gets in to play in your men's league, but they always seem to lose to the older guys that just kind of know how to play? And we kind of gloss over, there's obviously real basketball strategy elements to this.
This is answering a question for me about why your top 5 is as old as it is, because you were asked to choose your greatest team, choosing a guy specifically from history, and you went 2022 Steph. You went 1993 Michael Jordan. You went 2018 LeBron James. Is this part of your whole theory that grown-ass men win basketball games? Is that what I'm hearing right now?
Absolutely. And so I refer to it as scar tissue. Like every loss that I've ever taken on a basketball court still irks me in some way. And there's usually like reasons why. And those things end up pushing you to do something different the next time you're in that situation. And like really, and that really is it. Like if you look at like Steph in 2022, LeBron in 2018, for example, those guys had been through so much at that point that there's nothing they could run into that wouldn't refer back to a previous victory or failure in their career that they could use as like a kind of like an understanding of what they need to do to survive in that specific moment. And again, like, and to Steph and LeBron's credit, like they kind of have these corollaries around the league of guys that don't do the same things that they do. Let's zero in on Steph. Like Damian Lillard is a better athlete than Steph. He's not quite as big, but he was a better athlete, quicker laterally, quicker straight line, quicker, better vertical, right? But the thing with Dame was he was never willing to move without the basketball. and he was never willing to embrace a certain level of commitment to the defensive end of the floor. Those are two things that suck. You don't think that Steph has had a lot of possessions in his career where he's run in circles and just not gotten the ball because, maybe somebody missed him or that he was just defended really well. It sucks. It's exhausting. There's a conditioning element to it, right? The commitment to the defensive end. Those are things that are not fun. And those are things that are not necessarily associated with the love of basketball. They're associated with Steph wanted to win. And so he needed to maximize and squeeze that sponge to get every drop out of it. And that required him to kind of focus in on some things that were difficult. But yeah, like in general, I think there's obviously a fall off point. I think both Steph and LeBron are there now. I think Steph has lost a step since 2022. I think LeBron has obviously lost a step. But I think those two iterations of them were the best combination of physical ability and just mastery of the game at that point.
I would agree. I would agree with that. And I like those selections. I noticed that. I do have one additional thought on the Paul George thing. And it might be a critique of how players view other players. They are really big on we know, you don't know, which I would feel if I were them. I would feel like your opinion's invalid. I'm an NBA player and therefore I know. But I do think that they have a bias. Because you can either have a bias by being too close to something or too far from something. And I think that they really value the ability to do something that they themselves can't do. So they will just wax poetic about a guy who displays a level of skill, some sort of difficult display that they can't themselves do. But that's, again, to what we're saying, that's not necessarily the same as being as productive as you can be or helping your team to just the maximum level. But I've noticed that. I noticed it when I covered the sport that they would really love a Jamal Crawford. Maybe, no offense, Jamal, who's one of the nicest guys, maybe beyond his ability to help. And that was always, it made sense to me, but it was just funny how much they care about that versus, I don't know, what a PJ Tucker is going to give you.
You know what's interesting, though? There's one guy in the league that seems to get that recognition, and it's Drew Holiday. Why aren't there more Drew Holidays? Like, Drew gets it. Like, did you see he got votes for being best player on Team USA in that poll that went out. Like, there is this profound respect for Drew Holiday being this like glue guy, professional role player. Like, I would argue if you asked people to vote for who the best role player in the league was, they'd say Drew Holiday. Like, that seems to be his reputation. But he's like the only guy like that. Like, why aren't there more people who are fans of Caruso or like you know what I'm saying? That archetype should be more.
I just hearing these guys and how they talk, because they're looking at one of those role players and going, man, he's just doing what he's got to do. He's just doing what he has to do to get a check in the league. I think Drew Holiday is looked at as somebody who legitimately was all-star level and can do the glue guy things. And so there's more respect. He's actually making a sacrifice. He didn't need to necessarily do these things to make over $150 million in the NBA, but yet he did them. And I think that's my theory, combined with he was probably the best of the Team USA guys at spinning the ball on his finger as far as I could see. And I'm still shocked. I'm shocked that Steph doesn't know how to do that.
Is he lying?
To me, I really want to know. It would never have occurred to me. It never would have occurred to me. And yeah, it makes sense that you didn't have to do it. I remember once hearing that Albert Einstein didn't know his own home phone number because it's just not something he needed to know. But you would think somebody as coordinated as he is, as somebody who seems like one of these guys who's just good at everything, that he would be able to do to just spin the ball in your finger. It's not that hard. You just kind of put it up there and you do that. I'm so glad they made that video. I was blown away by that.
At a bare minimum, if we locked him in a room and said, figure out how to do it, he'd have it done. And I think he'd have it figured out in less than a minute. Like, his hand-eye coordination is too good to not immediately figure it out.